How's everybody doing with this?
It's a little tougher than it looks, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I think everything is.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, okay. So when you see somebody doing something, because we all experience this. You see somebody doing it, and you go, "Oh, that looks pretty easy," and it's easy because they've been doing it for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to watch Gary Meyer paint, and I'd go, "Okay, I get it," and then I go try and do it, and it was a disaster. You know what I mean? But the key there is that I understood the methodology now. Okay. Now I have to go and repeat the methodology and work through the methodology, just like anything. Okay. You don't come into architecture and think you're going to know that stuff overnight, right?
True. Yeah.
Which is what makes you valuable once you have that skill set. Okay. Like I can't go design a building. Actually, I did, but in a different way. You know, I wasn't worrying about all the logistic or the, interior realities and all that sort of thing. I was doing a big conceptual pass on it. Okay. And I'm sure, an architect could come in and go, now we got to change this because this has to be over here to do this. You'd work through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're thinking about infrastructure and all that stuff. Okay. My main thing right now is you guys are understanding, because the first phase of and you guys got my video and all that, the tutorial on this, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that you're understanding this concept at this point of just sort of glazing the color over a full value underpainting. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the main thing right now, because we're still going to, we'll work on this till Monday, probably. I'm hoping everybody will sort of get it to a place where I can start to go to opacity on it and start to talk to you about the opacity part of it and the brushwork and that kind of thing. And then also when I'm doing these like overlay washes on the color overlay, I'm adjusting that. I throw it down and then I might go into my hue saturation and adjust that a little bit. So I kind of dial it in. Does that make sense? Okay. Which is obviously a nice function of working digitally. Because if I'm working in real paint, I got to sort of dial that in before I put it down. Okay. And in here you can kind of throw it down and then adjust it, which I think is really helpful. Also, it's helpful to go look at reference like bluffs at night, things like that. So you can kind of see what this looks like in a night setting. Okay. Go look at people like Bill Anton who do a lot of nocturne paintings and look at how they handle the light. It'll give you a lot of information, quickly about how he's perceiving that light at night. Okay. And then rip off his palette. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's too sweet. Okay, who's this? Alexander.
Me,
oh, by the way,
Alexander.
Jessica. Is Jessica in here? Okay. Where you at? Is Alexander in here?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think?
It was kind of difficult trying to get into like the small buildings.
Well, I never really go in and do that. I'm broadly brushstroking the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
So I'm not usually going in and fussing around. What I'm doing is, so I'm going to take this and kind of desaturate it a little bit. Actually, no, I'll leave it for a minute. You always, whenever you're creating, I think almost anything, you always want to think big to small. Okay. Even when you're conceptualizing a project, you're going to start off with these rough thumbnails and just start working through your thinking, and then you sort of start fine tuning it. Okay. And when you're creating the actual imagery, you want to think big to small. And in this case, it means literally big areas and then starting to work into smaller areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I'm doing this kind of thing, I'm probably going to get myself an overall understanding of what color I want to use here. And then I'm going to come in here and probably just kind of wash this whole area in. I don't know if this ship's going to be that color. And then I might come in here and get my secondary color, whatever that is. And I'm just throwing things down. I'm not worried about it. And I'm probably going to go back and forth on this for a while. The rooftops, I am probably going to leave it that reddish color. And then I'd probably have to desaturate this. This feels a little saturated. That's a little better. And then, you know, figure out what color this up here is going to be. But I'm washing in this whole area. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I've got some cool starting to go on in here. And then, you know, then I'm going to, like you did, I'm going to move out here to the water. And then, you know, the rock. So the rock's going to be a big, and I'm just picking random colors. I wouldn't be this random normally. Then I'm going to knock in that whole rock maybe. And then I go, well, I know there's going to be some moonlight in here. So maybe I'll cool that off. Warm up this side of the bird a little bit. Cool off the other side. Erase this out. Oh, that's on the other layer. Okay. And then, you know, then I do the same thing up here. I'd figure out what color that is. And that in the daytime is just sort of an off-white. So I might just maybe go to a pretty neutral. Cool for now. It's going to get warmed up, but I'm not going to worry about that now. That's too purple, so let's get out of here. I'm going to go into a different layer. Oops. Just got to go in color overlay. I'm going to take a little bit of this reddish color because I think the dome is reddish. Gonna knock that in. Okay, and then the thing with this is, and I don't like that. I want to move it a little bit. Desaturate it a little bit. At some point, then I'm also going to come in here and go, well, I want to light up the windows because that's going to start giving me some interesting color to play with. So maybe I'll go kind of warm with that. And so we instantly start to get a little bit of temperature shifts going on. Does that make sense? Now, when I start building this up, let's see how far I can go with just this. It's probably a little too warm, but I'm going to leave it for now. You know, I'm going to start building it up like that. And then when I start going to my opaque layers, which will be on its own layer, I might come in here with a regular brush now, not on overlay, and, you know, start to light up these windows a little more here and there. And that's how I start to build up the opacity. Does that make sense? So we did nothing, but it's starting to look like something. Does that make sense? Yeah? That's making sense, correct?
Yeah.
Because eventually I want to, you know, this one doesn't have any line or anything in it really. So I'm going into it painterly. I'm like the little window frames in there. I might kind of save those and just kind of go in between them a little bit, but I've already washed in the whole overall lighting idea. The other thing I did with mine, just to make it more dramatic, was I uplit this. So let's go to, because I want to set up the lighting so I have some interesting lighting. Let's see what that looks like. So I can start saying there's some bottom light coming up here maybe. I'm going to do this on its own layer too, just so I can dial it in. And this again is just a regular layer. Now I'm starting to go more opaque.
Are you doing this with a mouse?
No, I'm doing it with a stylus.
Oh, okay, got it.
Now I could, you can do, I could do a lot of this with the mouse because the underpainting's already done. So I could, okay? Because I'm being very broad. If you notice, I'm being really broad. Why? Because there's already an underpainting underneath it. It's already worked out. Okay, now I'm gonna go a little hotter here and give this a point source right there. And I'm gonna knock this out a little bit. Soften up this light a little bit. And then I'm going to come in here and go, is that the light that I really want? It's sticking out a little bit to me. So I'm going to go through here. I kind of want it a little more artificial looking like that. And I'm going to knock it down again a little bit. So this whole process to me is all about, I'm going to bounce it around a little bit in here. It's all about pulling things out, pushing things back, adjusting. So this light, this blue light would cast here a little bit. So I know it could cast, oh, that's a little too strong. I'm going to go back to this color here. And it could bounce a little there, probably there. Maybe a little there, a little over here, and I can start building my light idea. Maybe up here where the spire is, maybe I can come up here or whatever that's called. And I can go put a little light at the top of it. Come back in there, like in here. And now I'm just talking about on my opaque layer, okay? Like back here, we've got an indication of some buildings. So maybe these I'll go back in with like a cooler light. It's got to be lighter. Can light up a few windows back there, probably up here. If you notice, I'm just doing little indication-y things. There could be another light up here, maybe. Some lights that indicate the top of this, maybe something back here, whatever, right? And you see, what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to establish some things to give things light. Like if I just go, this building is the Fullerton College Library at night with no lights on it, it's not very interesting, right? But if I uplight it, I'm starting to control my color environment. Does that make sense? So I'm establishing the light to make it a little more interesting because again, that building is just like an off-white. So it would just be, a lighter value, probably a cooler value at night in this kind of light. But it's not that dramatic. So I want to make it dramatic. Okay. And again, like I threw I threw a moon or something in it so I could kind of establish a brighter light source a little bit, but that moon could be out off frame too. The moon could just be higher. Does that make sense? So I have an excuse to throw that cool in there. On this one I liked, and this is just me. God, that's annoying. Hang on. Okay. Down here on this water, you could do a lot of different things, but I want to break it up so it's not all just blue. So I might come in here and throw, and it probably have to be a deeper green than that. Let's go a little more maybe I'll shift a little bit of it green, and I might have to pale that out a little bit. Depends on how much light it's getting. But see how you shift the color, it just helps. Does that make sense? So one of the main things I want you guys to get, especially if you're an illustrator or anything, shifting those temperatures, it helps it a lot to just sort of sophisticate it up, okay? Because if you look at almost anything in nature, it's not just one color. If it's getting reflected light, it's affected by the lighting that's lighting it. A warm light can throw off a cool shadow and vice versa. And those are rules of thumb. They can go out the window if you're in like the desert, okay? Or different environments, okay? Okay, does this all make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so think big to small, yeah?
Okay.
Where you at?
I'm here.
Okay, is that on color overlay, this layer here?
When I first got the JPEG, I was kind of having trouble because every time I selected a color, it would just turn like gray. It was on a
Oh,
grayscale.
because yeah, it was on grayscale, so you had to shift it to RGB.
I did something else. I don't know if it's like the same as RGB, but I went to image and then there's like something called, it was under mode. And
Yeah.
it was, yeah, I did that. So I switched it to I don't know. It wasn't called RGB though.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're clear here. CMYK is usually for print,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
And
That's what it
RGB is usually for screen. Okay.
How do I switch to RGB?
Same thing, mode, and then it's right here, RGB color. So you're in
Okay.
CIMAC,
Yeah,
Or
that's the one I
CMYK.
was under.
which, you know, that'd be fine if it was going to print or whatever. And it's fine
Mhm.
for this. I don't really care.
Okay.
I just tend to work RGB, and most people do if it's something that's just going to exist on the screen. Right? Where'd you go?
No, right here. I think you're lagging a bit. Unless it's me, I'm not sure.
I think it's Irene. I don't know if it's one of us.
Definitely, Mike.
Okay, but okay, so you're understanding that layer needs to be a color overlay layer, right?
A color overlay. Is that like just another layer over it, or did I?
No, it's like you put a layer like that,
Yeah.
and then this layer becomes color.
Yeah, that was like that wasn't an option for me. Like the bottom, like color and all those were just kind of.
That's because it was still in grayscale.
Oh.
If it goes to grayscale, I talked about this in the last class, but that's fine. I get it. And the reason I didn't shift it for you guys is because I want you to start going in there and going, here's the modes, here's what I changed to, and here's why, right?
Mhm.
So in this case, you know, we probably do an RGB. I don't care if you do it CMYK, but I just want to make sure that you know where to go to change that. And then
Yeah.
it can also be grayscale. Like if I was going to send this to somebody when it was still grayscale and I go, hey, here's my underpainting, here's the design, I'd send it to them in grayscale. It's a smaller file, right?
Yeah. All right.
But once I get it, like if things are grayed out like that, it's probably, that's why it's in grayscale and it's going, you can't do color overlay because there is no color. Okay.
All right.
And then once we do that, it's just like what I was saying before. Now I can go, I'm on my color overlay layer, and I'm just going to pick this just to use it. And now I can just sort of glaze the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, and then
Alright.
again, I go, that's a little strong, but I'm not even going to worry about it being too strong because I'm going to go, well, I'm probably going to knock back these cools a little bit. And then sometimes it kind of works. And then it also depends on, like, I go, well, I might like this. I'm glazing back and forth over things, just like I would. The way you can think of this initially is like watercolor. You never go opaque with watercolor. We're going to go opaque, but you never go opaque with watercolor. You're just constantly washing thin washes over the last color. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's basically like that. So I'm using that. Why that's important to me. I've already got the underpainting, so that's locked down. Okay. Now I can start to go and like put that warm down and then hit it over a little bit with my cool, just lightly, and knock it down a little bit. And I'll get this like more sophisticated color because I'm sort of working the same way I would with traditional paint. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, okay, I want to make this clear. That I'm not one of these people that's going digital versus traditional and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
The reason I'm referencing traditional is mostly, not always, but mostly when you see people and they go, I'm a digital artist, and you look at their paintings, you go, yeah, you sure are, because you don't understand anything about painting. Okay. And the difference between painting traditionally and digitally, why I make a big point of this, and this is for you guys further down the line, go take color theory, all that stuff. When you go into a digital environment, for the most part, people are picking colors, correct?
Yeah.
So they have no idea what color that is. Okay. They're just going, oh, I'm going to pick this red. And you're like, okay, well, that red is way too cool, but they don't know that. Okay. That's why you really need to understand your color theory. And I would argue, and now if you're a graphic designer, that's a little different, you know, but you do need to know your color theory and all that. But the work is never going to get that sophisticated because these people don't understand. They don't understand color. They don't understand brushwork. They don't understand any of that stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's mostly directed at like entertainment design people and illustrators, you know, that kind of thing, where it's like, you need to know this stuff. All you do, like if you're a graphic designer, you better know color, man. You know, if you don't understand that, how to put together a palette or whatever, when somebody comes to you and goes, hey man, we want to rebrand, or we're doing the fall line, all the packaging, because I've done this, the fall line packaging, man, you got to put together a coherent color strategy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So to me, it's all these levels of sophistication, and that's what elevates your work. Okay. And I probably said this before, but I used to take designers that worked for me just to various places. And one of them, when it was package design, is we would go to, I don't know if it was Nordstrom's or something like that, but we'd go to I'd take them to the cosmetics counter because there's a lot of really interesting packaging in cosmetics, very high end packaging. Okay. In that environment. And a lot of times they would come back and go, well, that's just like an off-white background with a type and a little, I don't know, maybe nothing other than type and a dot or type in this, and very simple, right? And they kind of go, well, that's so simple, blah, blah, blah. And that always kind of told me that they weren't very sophisticated, because then I'm going, okay, go make me something that cool using that few elements. And by the way, it's not just a type on a white background or whatever with an image or whatever. It's type on the exact right off-white background. There's a varnish pass hit on just on the lettering. If you turn it around, there's a reticulated varnish on it. They're not even seeing any of that stuff, okay? And they also don't realize that to reduce things down to that few elements takes a lot of sophistication and balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get in everybody's head is sophisticated design thinking, okay? Because this might be a digital painting, but it's still design, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so when I'm going back and forth with these two value or these two temperatures, I can hit it pretty lightly if I'm using a stylus, and I can start to dial in some interesting things. And then I go, well, maybe I will keep these warm because I'm going to go in here and again, start establishing lighting that I want to do that's more interesting. And maybe I'm going to go up on now this is going to go to an opaque layer. Okay. Now I'm not on a color layer, and I'm going to go, I want to light this up a little bit. That's not enough. Maybe I'll push it a little more there. That's too much. And I'm going to light these up with some warm lights. And then what can I do? Then I can come over here and I can start to hit this stuff. Let's say there's a light here. Now I can start to light this up a little bit. So, and I can start to light what I want to light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So this one's not on a color layer?
No.
What
This is how I'm
difference would it
starting to
make?
go to opaque. I don't go to opaque until I'm done with all these washes.
Yeah.
And I might jump over to the opaque. I'm like, in this case, I might go, well, I want to establish that warm reflected light. And I want it to help define the rocks and all that kind of stuff. So I'll go ahead and do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Setting that up right now. I'm also making sure that I keep my layers separated here, obviously, because I don't want to ever lock the opaque layer. I mean, what I would send to the client in this case, if it was depends on what this was for. If it was just for a design, an idea for something, then I'd probably just send them a high-res JPEG or something. If it's going to be for print, I'm going to send them a high-res TIFF file, you know, and probably, and unless and then they might come back and go, I want the layered file because I want one of my guys to go over and add this thing that we've been talking about in-house, and you're out of house and you don't know about it. So it's easier just to have them do it. It'll take 10 minutes. You know what I mean? So then you hand them that. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah.
And then sometimes what I usually try and do is I try and, what happened here? Hang on. What I usually try and do is not have them screwing with my work, but sometimes it's just part of the job. For some reason, I just lost my, hang on. What did I just do? Oh, I'm on smudge, sorry. You know, and then I go, maybe I can get a little on this overhang right here, a little right there. And I just start thinking about where I can bounce that light around and how I can use that light to make things just more interesting, or maybe light a little specific area. Sometimes when you're doing an underpainting like this, you're just brush working through it. But when you start looking at it, you're like, oh, that little area right there looks like a little alcove or something. And it's not even something you tried to do. It just happened in the paint, right? And I might want to go in there and put a little cool light in there and maybe go, maybe there's a little statue in there and I'll just hit some little white shape and light it with some cool lighting in there. So it feels like a little lit little area. Maybe I'll do some hot greens in there so it looks like it's being lit by something in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at, and then back here again, probably going to come back here. That's too strong. But that all looks industrial to me back there a little bit. So I could kind of go, well, maybe there's some weird lighting back there. Or not even weird, just a little more, you know, they're going to have some, what do you call that? Safety lighting and things like that. And some of them can go cool. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we know what we're doing, right?
Yeah, just switch it to RGB and then add a color layer next time.
Yeah.
Got it.
And also when you know, like we were just doing a minute ago, I might be washing the rocks in or something, then I'll kind of switch over to another place on a color layer and I'm washing it over. I might put that on a separate layer because I go, okay, I'm going to want to dial this in, you know, on its own layer. Because if it's on the same layer, then I'm dialing everything in. And I might go, no, I just want to, because I like to throw things down a little bit in the digital environment. I like to throw things down a little bit and go to my hue saturation and kind of adjust it a little bit and just dial it in.
Okay.
By the way, Gaylord, I don't know, you guys probably know who this is. Gaylord Eccles died, and he was another big, giant art center teacher. Okay. And the reason I mention that is these people are important. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, be careful with this. That's getting really light.
Yeah, that's where I kind of messed up on that part.
Okay, so you have this as a layered file, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so just knock that out and just
Yeah.
probably cool it down a little bit. Again, you notice I'm using this warm, cool idea a lot
Mm-hmm.
in this environment. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Like that, right?
Whoa.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
See how he's really pushing that warm, cool?
Yeah.
And if you get in on these things, this I know this stuff looks very complicated. Maybe it is. I've just been doing it a long time. But if you look at this, there's not much here really. When you go to like, it's pretty abstract. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, whether you work this way or not, I think it's a good way to think. Okay. And then if you look over here at this thing, it's really just a dark silhouette. And then he just lit it with that moonlight on the top and warmed it. Look at, there's hardly anything here. This lit right here. He sort of focused in on the face more. And what did he do? He put that big dark value in front of this sort of mid-tone value. So it's boom, it pops right out, right?
Yeah.
But then you get this overall effect that this is pretty impressive, right?
Mm.
And then if you look
yeah.
here, you've got this very hot light, but it drops off up here, right? Unless it's like a mirror or something, it's going to drop off, okay? And then let's see, I got another one in here. I don't know what this is. This one's really just using more cool, and there's a couple of pops in it. Okay. That's sort of stay more in a monochromatic area, okay? And here's another one. Got all this cool, look at this lighting down here. You see that?
hmm
Okay, now that's not just a warm, cool thing. He's dialed in that weird lighting you get from screens, okay?
Yeah.
And what really, it also helps to really ground these areas. Like this right here establishes like, okay, it looks like almost like some sort of sports bar in some modern environment or whatever, futuristic environment. And then the whole thing up here goes mostly warm, right? And again, you get in here, look at, it's totally abstract. And by the way, this underpainting right here looks to me like, this looks photo bashed to me. Like this stuff in here looks photo bashed. Does that make sense?
Like blurry or
No, what he probably did here is, and I'll get a little more into this. I don't want to get too much into photo bashing because I think it's a very good technique
hmm
when you're working in the world, okay? Because it speeds up your process, okay? And this is another thing I want you guys to be aware of. And the reason I'm talking about all this in this class is this is 101. So what I'm trying to do is set you up to go into other people's classes, okay? But I also want to sort of, at least in my thinking, sort of set you up about what these things are, okay? Because when you're looking at a world like whatever, illustration, concept design, whatever you want, there's always a little bit of haziness in there. Like what is expected of me? What should my skill set be? What should be in my portfolio? All that kind of stuff. And what photo bashing is you take photos and you start sometimes, and it looks like he did that with this. He might've just taken a real textural lit environment or something. You know, sometimes people will use like, I've seen people use like the slums in like India because it's just a lot of random shapes. And then he might've taken something like that, but it was at night and just threw it in the background and started working over it. So he's letting some of that stuff live underneath it just to create complexity. Does that make sense?
hmm
And I'll show you that later on. Now, here's the problem with that. He knows what he's doing, obviously, okay? And this guy works in the entertainment industry. He's a pretty big dude. And he's got time constraints. And photo bashing, all that stuff is great for when you got a time constraint. Photo bashing is not good when you don't know how to paint, okay? Because if you're going for a big job and some real art director is looking at it, they're going to look through it and go, everything in this person's portfolio is photo bashed, you know,
Yeah.
and that's not, you can't do that on everything. And then what that tells an art director is like, if I ask you just to go from your own idea to your own finish, you're always going to have to be going and finding things that fit. And then what happens as a designer is now the only trick you know to make a finished painting or rendering or whatever is to use photo bashing. So what does that do? That drives your design thinking, where your design thinking goes, oh, I got to design this in a way that I know how I can render it. It kills your design process. Because if you have a good skill set, that design process is wide open, you know, because then you're sitting there designing something crazy and you're going, I can't wait to render this thing. It's going to look bitchin'. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of going, oh, I got to be able to find photos for this and put this. And then it changes your design thinking. You start designing to your process. Does that make sense?
hmm
So anyway, it looks like there's some of that in there, but this guy obviously knows what he's doing. But my other point is it's very structured, but it's also very abstract, okay, which I think is cool. I don't know what this is. Another idea. Okay, little hits of this tealy thing in here, but the rest of it's pretty warm. But you see how big an impact something like that has, that warm, cool pop, right?
Yeah.
You'll see it constantly in concept design.
Mm.
And because it works, I'm not knocking it, it works. But again, what I think shows off his skill more, because this is the same guy, I love the way he nailed this weird screen lighting down here. That's really interesting to me, okay? Now, again, that's something you could just wash it over and then go into your hue saturation or something and dial in that exact, that's a very specific type of lighting, okay? A lot of people will just go in and do it very bluish. And it's like, no, he grayed it down and he smoked it up a little bit. Because if that's like, you know, people are watching something on there, they're probably smoking and, you know, it's a smoky, it could be a wet environment, who knows, right?
hmm
Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So my point is, be careful, because I have a problem with this. I'm going to tell you this just because I want you to be, I'm only telling you guys this stuff so you're aware of it. When you go into a digital painting class, and let's say it's a beginning or intermediate painting class, and the teacher starts spending a bunch of time on things like photo bashing, that's out of sequence. Okay. I think that you shouldn't even learn photo bashing until you're probably in an advanced digital painting class and you've actually learned how to paint. And then you learn those techniques that shorten your time. Those are workflow techniques. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I still argue if you want to be really good at it, do it traditionally, then move into the digital environment. Okay. So that all makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And by the way, you guys saying, oh, it's a lot harder than it looks. Yes, it is. That's why you got to work at it. And that's why, by the way, when you get good at this, it feels like a superpower because you really realize how many people, I mean, most of the world can't do this. Most of the world can't paint. Most of the world can't draw. Most of the world can't. And man, everybody wants to be able to do that. Okay. I mean, I hear that every time I go out. God, I wish I could do that. And I'd be the same way if I didn't know how to do it. My whole life would be like, man, I wanted to be able to do that. You know what I mean? And having the ability to do that to me is a huge thing. And it's probably just because it's my thing. But I think a really solid skill set is something feels really good, whatever it is. Okay. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that means you got to work hard at it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to be good at it. Because I can't stand, one thing I can't stand, I have somebody in another class, man, and every time I go, you need to push that. And I'll go, you need to put something over here to do this, to do whatever I'm talking about. And she goes, well, that's really hard. And I go, yeah, it's really hard. Like, if you don't want to do something that's really hard, don't do this. Okay. Whether it's whatever you guys are in this class, everybody in here, whether you're in graphic design, illustration, computer sciences, architecture, those are all things that are hard to do. Okay. And they're not going to be easy to attain. And if you don't want to do the hard work, don't do it. You know what I mean? Go be a dental hygienist. Okay. And I'm not saying being a dental hygienist is easy, by the way. Sure it isn't. Okay, this looks like an opaque layer to me. Where are you at?
So I actually did an overlay.
Okay, so it's on color overlay?
No, it was just the overlay.
Okay, try and go back into it with your color overlay. And by the way,
yeah,
there are times, and I want you guys to start playing around with this. You know, you can only get so far with the color overlay. Okay, it's going to get you so far. And then you might go to another layer and use a different overlay that just works. Okay. So I can't tell you like, oh, now go to this one and go to this one. You have to kind of go, or you might just go, okay, I'm going to start going into a more opaque layer, but I'm going to pull back the opacity, you know, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I didn't like the color layer at first, which is why I started with the overlay.
If it worked, I'm okay with it.
But during class right now, I actually went back and changed it all to color, and I actually like it better. So it's,
okay,
it's
cool.
different. Yeah.
So let's just go back and look at it on Monday. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And by the way, again, you guys are going to take these things, I don't know, go into some class, this class, and all your, you know, methodology is going to become your own methodology. I just want it based on solid fundamentals, right? I'm not saying like, oh, you're going to work like this your whole life. I'm just hoping the idea of it, you know, and other things you learn and all that kind of stuff that, you know, you start cobbling together your own point of view. Point of view, individual point of view to me is hugely important. Okay. Because we're in this era right now, and it's probably always happens in every era, but I think it's really strong right now. We're in this very herd thinky era where everybody's just sort of like disciples of somebody or fans of somebody. And it's like, you don't want to be somebody else. That's not going to give you a good career. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the poor man's version of whoever. And, you know, and they call you for those jobs. Like, hey, we can't afford Ralph Steadman. Hey, call Mike Sheehan. He does a knockoff Ralph Steadman. It's good enough. And we'll pay him $300. We would have paid Ralph Steadman $5,400, but we'll pay Mike $300. You know what I mean? Because he's just a wrist. He just knocks off Ralph Steadman. You do not want to be that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Go watch, by the way, Jordan, go watch, I might have said this. Go watch that Frank Gehry documentary. Have you
Keep
watched that?
going. No, I haven't.
You should watch that because there's a part in there, and I think I've said it in here, but I think it's important. He did, before Frank Gehry became Frank Gehry, he had this house, and he still has it, I think. You should drive by it. It's probably, I'm sure, I think he still has it. And it was just the house he lived in. It was like a more normal house in Santa Monica. He constantly experimented on it. Like they were saying something about like one time he's shaving, he goes, I should have light right here. And he'd go get a hammer and knock a hole in the ceiling and then figure it out. And then he'd figure out the solution to it, right? Like, how am I going to do the lighting? He used chain link. He used corrugated, you know, all these things that he uses, right? And then he was having, and then he did the parking structure that used, and I think it's still there, over at 3rd Street Promenade, which is a couple
Yeah, I
miles from his
remember.
house, right?
Yeah, you
Super
told me.
boring, suburban, retail, nothing at all spectacular about it. It's actually kind of ugly. And he was having a dinner party or something, you know, and he had a firm with like 40 people in it. And he was doing those kind of commissions, right? Making money. And then the guy came to his house and goes, you did this? Like all the stuff he was doing to that house. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and you did that thing over on the 3rd Street Promenade? And he goes, yeah. He goes, why? He goes, what the hell are you doing that for? Right? And Frank Gehry's like, why am I doing that? He went in, shut down all his projects, and became Frank Gehry. Like, just did his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's important. Personal point of view is important. Okay, where's Chris?
Here.
Okay, where'd this image come from?
I just got off Google.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, this now, are you telling me this is nighttime?
It's
Yeah.
like kind of like day, but like it's kind of like foggy or something, you know?
But it's daytime?
Yeah.
I might. Okay, so we got to establish that because right now I'm sort of like the lights are on, parts of it feel like it's night, and then parts of it feel like it's not, it's like just a dark environment. Does that make sense? But then this is
Yeah.
super lit, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a misty environment, it's probably, now again, I might be able to just go over and glaze this back. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm saying there's a lot of this bluish, let's see how this does. Maybe, damn it, hang on. Okay. Maybe I'll go in with a different brush. Let's just try something else. So I feel like it needs to be even more grayed out. And again, I'm probably going to dial this in. Oh, that's so annoying. Okay, so I got this on a color layer. I'm going to start cooling some of this stuff out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then I'll probably go. I might go, there's a little bit of light hitting some spots here. Now, if I want to have some light hitting some of this greenery, see how it knocks it back a lot? Now we still got little hints of your green in there, which is fine. And I could also come in here with an eraser on low opacity. Probably a soft one like that. And throw down the opacity really low. And I could pull out little sections like that. And I could also say there's, and I'm just going to do this half-ass. I'm going to go up here. you know, and I'm just going to do one. Okay, I got it. There it is. I'm just going to do one here. And this is probably not the right spot for it, but I just want to, and I'll probably take this out in a second. Let's see if I can grab. Now, again, I can dial this in, so I'm just going to try and dial it in. I'm going to go to my gradient. And I could have something streaming in here to give me some light in this foreground, kind of like you had it already. Hang on. I'm going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Cool it out. Or soften it up. It's probably too... And again, I'd have to pull it back. I might even try and find an overlay that works with it. Like even that's kind of cool. Let's see if I can. Trying to find something a little more subtle, like maybe that. And then I could probably come in here with my eraser. Again, really super low opacity. Okay, that is super annoying, that thing. I'm gonna put it even lower and probably knock some of this down a little bit so it's not so strong. But then I could have an excuse to come in here and I would dial that in a lot more than that. And I could keep these warm hits you're getting in the foreground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now that's, I would design it better than that, but then I could get these, I could keep these warm hits in the foreground. Maybe even I'll lose it a little more. So it's really subtle, you know, and I'd probably do it where it's like the light streaming down. There's like 3 of them. Maybe I throw them in the back. I don't know, but you can see now where you push these back with a little bit of cools, it feels like it's more in the same environment. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then if I'm going to have these warm pops in the foreground, I need to have something that lights it a little bit. Now that could be sunlight that's off screen and it's hitting that foreground area, but just got to make sure that we're, you know, it's also going to probably be hitting the front of this, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Looks a lot better.
Yeah. So if we come in here, ooh, don't do that. Let's try this on color again. Now the problem when you're doing the color overlay is it's only going to go so light in value. You know, and oops, what did I just do there? And I think you guys hopefully are understanding why I tell you never go to pure black. It won't take any color overlay, right? It just won't do it. It sucks up the color. It doesn't do it. So you never go below like a 8 and then adjust your values back from that. Okay, so it'll look like a really dark value because you've adjusted all your values around that. Okay, so a lot of times you might want to put down that darkest value you think you have in that painting or whatever, put the darkest value down and go, okay, I'm never going darker than that. Okay, and then you just adjust, you build your values based on that. Okay, and then, you know, I might come in here. Let's see if I can find something here. Like maybe that, just warm it up a little bit. Because why? Because it's facing the sun, right? Or this beam of light. I'm not going to overdo it. Let's see if I can get this. I don't know where that blue is. There it is. I'm going to get this over part out. Okay, and then, you know, I'd start lighting that a little bit. I might even come in here now and go, well, this whole thing, Maybe not there, maybe here. Maybe this. And I'm going to go and grab your blue again, this bluish gray stuff. And let's try it on a color overlay. This might work. There, and I cooled it out. See that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about it, if you notice, like when you have these sort of painted underpaintings, how fast you can make the lighting kind of interesting, right?
Hmm.
Which is what I like about this. And then, you know, I really like this area in here. It's kind of cool. And now I've got this, you know, and then I can go, well, maybe I've got a different, maybe it's just light hitting here. Or maybe I just do this. Because I just want an excuse to throw some warms in here without that, because I don't really have a place for that beam. Maybe I can go, I don't know if this will work. Let's see. I'm going to go up here. Oops. Oops, I screwed up. Hang on. Probably don't want it that bright, but I'm going to dial it in. Maybe I've got a little bit of a hint of warmth back there. And again, probably have to dial it in. Hang on. Whenever you do a big swatch like that, it always slows it down. So let's go here for a second. It's thinking again. That's probably okay. Okay, so what I would do, and I don't know why it's not letting me do this. Hang on. There we go. I might come in here and make sure that's the right. I like it a little pinkier. Then I'm going to go into my eraser, get rid of some of this. You know, and then maybe I take some of this pinkier value. Oops, I'm on the wrong thing. And that's too hard. I get it. Hang on. But again, I'm establishing some lighting that maybe I can screw around with here. It's too much. That's fine. I'm going to go pull down my opacity a little bit and just maybe warm up that foreground based a little bit on that lighting. Does that make sense? Jordan?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, but see how we're pushing up the sophistication level of the color thing, right?
Hmm.
Because now it's starting to look kind of cool, you know. And then I'd have to go in and adjust that background mountain a little bit. I think the greens are still a little too hot. I'd probably just desaturate them a little bit, so on and so forth, right?
Hmm.
And then, you know, this also, sorry, once I go down the rabbit hole, I can't stop. Maybe they've got some lanterns in here. Now I'm just on an opaque layer. You know, maybe they've got some lanterns out here in this garden somewhere. Oops. And maybe I just go over it, make it kind of feel like maybe it's, I never use black usually. Hang on. I'm gonna get this dark value right there. And I could kind of come in here and work over these shapes. Start to feel like there's a structure over them. And then I can go take that same color, maybe wash it up on here a little bit because it's casting some light on there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And also I'd put a deck on here. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that all makes sense, yeah?
Yeah. Looks really, really, really good.
The thing I like about it, about working this way, is it really lets me build up some really complex looking lighting just based on sort of exploring a little bit and sort of happy accidents-y kind of things, even though I know what I'm doing. But, you know, it gives me a chance to go, I'm going to try like a crazy blue right there. I might not try that in a traditional painting. So I'm like, man, if I screw that up, you know, I've screwed it all up. And in here, I can just constantly explore. And if I have a loose underpainting and then I start approaching the lighting from a sort of a loose perspective, I start to get a much more painterly image. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where's Cindy at? You here?
I'm right here.
Okay, what do you think?
I had a lot of fun doing this. Just the hills get me a little bit confused because like the mixing of the colors. So I just did one base and then I have to go back and do some.
Yeah, again, another thing you can do is like you can put a layer over the, or even you could just do it on the same layer, and start sort of overlaying glazes so they sort of start to cancel each other out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd probably desaturate the sky a little bit and the water a little bit. It's really saturated. Now this you could probably with the water probably just go gray down the same blue maybe. It's too gray. Or even I might even be able to just take my sponge tool here and put it on desaturate. And then you can dial up how much of it you want. So let's go to 50. And I could kind of desaturate. That's a little strong. So I'm going to go out a little more. Go down to. You know, and I could just desaturate that a little bit. I can introduce a secondary color like I did with the green before. And then up here, that's really saturated. I'm going to desaturate this. Let's see what we get. Actually, I want to go the other way. And see how it starts to gray it down a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also cooling it out. And I'm just going to sort of dance around and start. See, that's starting to work a little bit.
Yeah.
And then once I sort of get that dialed in, and I'm just kind of looking at the up-facing planes being cooler because they're being affected by the sky. And then the rest of it is getting a little warmer. And then the reason I'm going to leave it pretty warm, because normally I'd say it's not going to be that warm, because again, I'm going to come in here at some point and light this thing somehow. And I know I'm going to have some warmth in there just because I know I'm going to do that. So if I come in here and I go, okay, there's a little bit of light in here. Now I got an excuse why this stuff is lit a little more hotter. And I can put one there. And I can just put them wherever I need to drop, you know, and I could change up these lights. Temperatures in here too. Maybe it spills onto this a little bit. And then I'm starting to control my lighting. Does that make sense? And then up here too, I'd probably cool this out. Oops. I'm gonna go up here. Then I'll desaturate it. Like here, I put it so that you stand in a little pool, so I had a real reason to reflect some cools up here. And then see, that's too purple, so I'm going to dial it in. It's a little better. I'm probably going to desaturate it a little. And then also what I did is I go, okay, I got this light source up here, and I'm saying that there's this blue here. And you don't have to do this. It's just something that I do. I'm trying to justify everything I do. And everything I do sparks an idea for me to make sense of it. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Did that make sense what I just said?
Yeah.
So what I did is I go, well, this is a wet environment. Like, you know, a wave could have just crashed over the other side of that rock, or it's just a, you know, it's a damp environment, right? So then I could go, well, maybe there's this water running down into this little pool here. Oh, I'm still on color. I want to go here. You know, and I can have it reflect a little bit because it's going to catch some of that light from the moon and all that. Then I go, I can come in here and put a little ripple or whatever around where he's standing. And then this is going to spill over a little bit. And this. And then, you know, if I warm this up over here, the water could even catch some highlights from the warmth of the whatever. And see how I start to justify things and make it a little more interesting. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what you're doing?
Thank you.
Okay, good. And by the way, you guys, I probably said this, but this is asking a lot of you guys, okay? But the reason I think this class is important is for that reason. We can deep dive into this a lot more than I could in another class. And I think we have to take advantage of that, okay? This isn't the one I just looked at, right? Oh, it is, right? One of the two different ones. I have two from you?
Oh, I did. This one was from yesterday, and then I worked on it a little bit more and submitted it again.
And this one, right?
Yeah.
I think this one's working. Yeah, this one here is working better.
Yeah, that's the updated version.
Yeah,
I forgot to delete the other one.
Now start to get some, and be careful. Now this can happen, but see up here how your temperature of your windows is greenish.
Mm-hmm.
Now that can happen, but what I usually do, if you go and look at a drive-by, you guys should look at this. If you're driving by office buildings, big buildings and stuff like that at night, look at the banks of windows, right? Because even if they're closed, there's still lights on, right? There will be banks of floors where it looks bluish. There'll be banks of floors where it looks sort of like this, sort of a sickly greenish yellow. There'll be floors where it's a little warmer. It just depends. Like there's smoked glass. There's various light sources in there. There's warm and cool light sources in there. So it varies, okay? So I'm not saying it can never do that. This is just a personal thing. I just always try and warm it up a little, unless it's like an office building or something like that. And it's because I think, and I don't know if it's just me, but the sort of when yellows start to go greenish in this sort of idea, it gets a little off-putting. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think I
Yeah.
used the pale yellow like as the base, but it somehow just kind of mixed into green because of the background.
Now it can have some of that, but I just argue I'd warm it up a little. And you don't have to warm up the whole thing either. You can just warm up some of them and then it'll work, because then it feels like it's light dropping off and doing some interesting things. Because there is, you know, and especially in this blue, very blue environment, it could go very greenish. You're looking through atmosphere, right?
Right.
And see, if we add a little warm pops in there, it just sort of helps, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, go. Start glazing. What we're basically doing here is just glazing at this point. Okay, where you at?
That's me.
Okay, what do you think?
I was messing around mostly. I got like different layers and tried different overlays and
I don't have a
stuff
problem
like
with that.
that. Okay.
But at some point, I want to make sure that you're dialing it in a coherent way, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I actually think it's a good thing to take this and just go do exactly what you just said, because you can always turn those layers off and or adjust them and do new layers, but you're kind of like, okay, I'm getting it. Or I like this little thing that I figured out or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what's this green back here?
I was thinking of like a tree foresty thing in the back.
Okay. Now, here's my comment on that. In this environment, I'm probably not going to see it that saturated,
True. Yeah.
right? So I just desaturate it a little bit.
Okay.
Now, if you want to make that statement more, then I come back to lighting, right? Because maybe
Yeah.
you go, well, I want it to, you know, over here, I wouldn't do it. But like here, I might go, I'm going to come in here. And grab this green. I'm going to heat it up. Let's see if this works. I don't know if this will work. Yeah. And I'm going to say there's some light down here. Because then I have an excuse for that green to pop, right?
Hmm.
So then I'm going to go point source. Now I need a point source, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be super saturated. I think that's not bad. Then I can kind of repeat it maybe. So it really says like, oh, there's a light source down there. And then I'm going to dance it up into here a little bit. I'll knock it back down. I like the way it goes pale up here. And then maybe I'll even take this almost to, that's my total point source right there. See what I mean?
Hmm.
So if I want to do something, especially in this kind of environment. Now, if this was like Jordan's project for, let's say, a residential neighborhood, I can't go as crazy with the lighting. I can't, that's starting to get into entertainment sort of lighting, sort of stage lighting things. He can do the same thing, but he'd have to use different, more believable. He can't make everything look like a theme park. Does that make sense?
Right. Right. Mhm.
But he can use some of these techniques, as you might go, well, I am going to have some lighting there. I am going to do that. Or I'm going to, or maybe the backyard has, you know, those nice bulb lights over the backyard because I'm selling a lifestyle. I'm selling that whole idea. And that's not a big thing. Maybe I can get away with that. You know, whatever he could get away with within the parameters of his, if he does this kind of thing with his architectural running, people are going to be like, dude, it's not a theme park. Like, what are you doing? But he can still use these ideas. Does that make sense?
Right. Hmm.
Because I want to make sure that this stuff is communicating to whatever discipline you're in. Okay.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. So, you know, and then I'd probably go, now I got to get some dramatic lighting on here. Because if that's lit like that, that means it's a sort of hyper lit environment. Probably. You're probably not
Yeah.
going to have a big wash on it. Actually, I'm designing this right now for my girlfriend's restaurant property, right? Where I'm going to put a lot of light washes on the trees. I'm going to put there's some trees that go up about, I mean, they go up 75 feet. I don't know how tall they are, but I'm going to put some cool lights up there. So when she has an event there at night, because she does a lot of events, I can turn those on way up in the trees, and it's going to throw a cool and sort of accentuate the idea of moonlight, right? Then I'm going to have all these warms, and I'm going to get a system where you can dial them in, you know, probably on an app or whatever, and adjust them and go, hey, it's fall. Let's really push the fall colors in here, and then I'll knock that blue light down into here. It's and it'll look magical because it's in the forest, right?
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. And then how am I going to do that? I'm going to go take a picture. I actually should go do it today. I'm going to go take a picture at about twilight. Actually, I'll bring it in here when I do it and I'll show you how I did it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go take a picture of the property. I'll probably take 2 shots and I'll combine them. So I have the whole property in a panorama. And the reason I'm not using the panorama in the iPhone is because it tends to warp and bend things. I don't like that. So then I'll have that. Then I'll probably do an overlay over that and knock it down to more evening. And the reason I'm doing it late afternoon is because it's not too, if I take a picture at night, I'm not gonna be able to see anything. But if I take it later in the day where it's not too lit, but it's not where I can still see details and things in there, and then I'll control how much night I put on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to basically use a lot of these techniques of like color overlay and things like that to go, I want to wash here. I want one here to obscure that. I want that and da, da, da. And then I'll show it to her and go, here's what I'm thinking. And then we'll take that. And here's the value of this, Jordan, because you'll do shit like this. The value of that is now we'll be able to take that to either whoever I'm going to get the lighting from and whoever's going to install it. And I've got a rendering and I go, we're doing this. You know what I mean? And they're going to look at it and go, you need this light, you need this light. I got to put a transformer there. I got to do that. I'm going to have to get 2 guys to go up into those trees to put those lights up. And boom, when I get a quote, it's accurate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's exactly what you're looking for.
Uh-huh. And then they go, and then he comes back and goes, it's going to cost 6,000. I think she gave me a budget of 5,000 or something on it. And he goes, it's going to be 6,000. And I go, well, I need to knock that down. You know, what can I do? It's just like what I used to do at work, right? And then I look at it and go, I don't really need that. I can get rid of that. What if I get rid of that? You know what I mean? And I dial it in because the design is always compromise. You know, it's almost never not compromised. Nobody says, hey, design a theme park, do whatever you want. We don't care what it costs. Nobody does that. Okay. Or a toy or a product or an illustration or anything. There's always compromise. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So that makes sense. And then I would say get a coherent lighting idea on this.
Okay. Yeah.
And also, these are very pink, these rocks. And my question is like, why are they so pink or purpley or whatever?
That's a great question.
And then maybe let's just do this. It's going to screw everything up, but I'm just going to try it. If I knock it down and desaturate it a little bit, it gets a little more coherent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then you go, what is all this?
I think I wanted this saturated look, but it's hard to get everything to like
So,
work.
okay, if you
together.
want to do saturated, like in this kind of thing, or even in daytime, if you want to saturate things in this, then you've got to light it.
Yeah.
Because if you look, let's look at this. Because I always say go to the headwaters. Don't go looking at concept paintings. Go and look at the headwaters, which is what do bluffs look like at night. Now this is a small image, but it looks pretty good. You see that?
Yeah.
Now you might, if you go, I kind of like that, at least for the warm rock part, sample it and see if it, because sometimes you'll sample it and it's not at all right, but you can kind of dial it in a little bit. Let's look at these bluffs at night, right? Let's look at Huntington, they're called the Cliff. It's good daylight information. And I'll just find night pictures of these things. Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm going to try just this. Here we go. Look.
Oh,
But I'm
that's
going to
cool.
look at photography. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. Look, it's doing exactly what we're talking about. It's getting all this cool up here. Now, a lot of these have been manipulated, but that's okay. That's pretty good just for the start of the warm part. That's a time lapse. You know, and then I'll just find one that I think is pretty coherent information, or I'll just find, look, here's one that's lit, right?
Yeah.
Now, I guarantee you, go ahead.
How did they light that like that?
There's probably just some sort of, I'm assuming the city, that's in Laguna Beach, I think, right?
I don't know.
That arch, I'm pretty sure, is in Laguna Beach. The city, I would assume if this is lit like that, the city lights it.
Oh, okay.
Make it dramatic. So if it's probably like if you're at Bluff Park or whatever that's called over here at night and you're looking out towards the lagoon like that, you probably see this beautifully lit environment, right?
Yeah.
That would be the city doing that. Anyway, but look, there's more. Yeah. So they lit it. Look. Now, what I don't like about this is that light feels very white and very washed out.
Mm-hmm.
So I can change that. I can make it a little more like this. You know, and I might grab 3 or 4 different images. Now here's a painted thing. So again, look, the moonlight's hitting here. It's warming up over here a little bit, right?
Yeah.
On and on and on. So, you know, you want to go look at some reference, okay? And then just use that as your jumping off point. That's really cool. Look how it's getting yellow and then a little bit greenish up here, but very desaturated.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of interesting. Okay. So what you want to start doing, you want to start off with a coherent plan to sort of solve that issue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then again, what I like doing is I love being able to glaze over the last color and sort of like knock it down and pull it forward. And then, you know, erase it out. And I start to arrive at a simple, but very complex looking color solution. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then again, give this some sort of point of view. I mean, the ship is easy because you can just say it's lit with lanterns. It's warm. It's, you know, that's easy, right?
Yeah.
And this up here is easy at, you know, however you want to light it. I mean, you can light that however you want. And I like the water, but again, I'd probably introduce another little subtle color. And again, look at harbor at night, tide pools at night, you know, and just see what other little colors pop in there, right? Usually it's like usually it goes greenish. Sometimes it goes, you know, colorless, but you know, you have to, that's why whenever you're somewhere, be cataloging this stuff all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Like if I'm sitting there in front of a campfire, I'm sitting there looking at the campfire going, look how those embers go. They don't go orangey, they go magenta orange. Then they go to a really hot, almost white, but there's a little bit of warmth in it, you know, and I notice all that stuff. And I notice how I'm studying it all the time, right? And then I catalog it in my head. Okay.
And that's why you get made fun of, because you're just staring at the fire.
It's why I don't have an active social life. Because to be honest with you, that's all I see everything as. Everything to me is a research trip. Like my girlfriend one time, she goes, hey, we got to go to this gala thing for the Chamber of Commerce or something. I go, that's cool. So I just sit at the table and I draw everybody and just trip out on it all, right? How absurd it is, how weird it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and people are just staring at you like, what's Sloaner doing?
They don't even notice, you know? And then if they do notice, you know, because I was sitting at a table with other people, then you just become the most interesting person at the table because they're not doing anything.
That's true.
Yeah, and then they start going through your sketchbook and then they, hey, what you should do this for a living. I go, I do it for a living. Oh, you should work for Disney. I have worked for Disney, you know? Okay, any other questions?
No, I'll work on it over the weekend.
Okay, good. You better.
Is that a threat, Mike?
Yeah, straight up.
When are we having the party?
I'm hoping to do something. I have to figure it out. Because at first I was like, I want to do something up here. And I still kind of do, but it's like, how many, you know, and then I kind of go, well, if I do it up here, then everybody can show up who wants to. And if you don't, you don't. You know what I mean? But you'd have to drive up here. But it would be kind of cool because I could do it on the property. So I already talked to my girlfriend about it.
Yeah, We wanted to come visit your cabin.
Yeah, if you want to, maybe we'll do that. I just gotta. It's a matter of getting to make sure, like, okay, what's fall gonna look like? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
Because I want to do it. I want to do it as a. I'm so missing campus. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I just posted something on Instagram this morning because I just stumbled on a drawing from the drawing group, and man, I miss that. You know?
I thought you were gonna do the what's that called, where we meet up on campus and draw in the cafeteria.
I have to still see if that's cool because they're doing okay. So what I'm understanding about that is they're going. Hang on. Oh shit. Sorry. Ugh. Sorry. It seems like they're being really on top of like, you got to stay 6 feet from each other. And that kind of defeats my purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's just hard to figure out. And then I go, well, I'd rather screw it. Just go meet at Corner Bakery or something and draw there. But then I also want to talk to the school about that and go, is that connected to the school then? If somebody gets, I don't want anybody getting sick because of me. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Other than Frank. If Frank gets sick, I'm okay.
Oh my god. I'll let him know.
All right, who's this? This is Isaac. Where you at?
Here.
Okay, so you're going with really dramatic lighting, yeah? Where'd you go?
Still here.
So is this sort of like just a weird atmosphere? Like, what are you thinking?
I was trying to do it like those paintings where it's like the sun setting and the skylight turns from like kind of yellowish to like crimson in a way.
To what?
When the sun sets and when like the skylight changes from like yellowish to like a red, crimson,
Pinkish.
pinkish, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it happens out here all the time.
yeah, I tried to do that, but I don't think it came out the way I wanted to.
I think what I would do is like, as it goes, like if it's this hot, I might come in here on my opaque layer maybe. Because if you want to make it super crazy dramatic, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But then I think you got to justify the lighting a little more. So maybe it's got a really hot towards the horizon kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I love carving around shapes. And then I'm going to loosen that up a little. Because, you know, I don't know where this is. It could be on another planet for all I know. And they got a crazy, weird atmosphere. And then, you know, then see how it's starting to justify that amount of color a little bit? Yeah? Where'd you go?
I'm still here.
And then I might, and I can't do it that way. Let's see if I can do it another way. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to dance a little bit of up into here, but I'm going to soften it up a little bit. So it's pulling some of that hot light at the bottom up into these clouds and stuff. And then I could start to justify it and I'd have to build it out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You know, and then this is a very dramatic color. I'd probably knock it down here so it's not so strong on this water just a little bit. You know, and then make sure also that like if it's on the water, because I mean, I'm going to get again some of this. Maybe there's a little bit of it out here in between these ripples. And again, I'd soften that up. You know, so I'm starting to bounce that lighting around so it justifies itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I could probably get some of this. You know, and start to hit these rocks with it. But again, I do the whole thing. What happened? I do this whole thing. I have to try something different here. Hang on. See, like this layer's not working for me now. Hang on. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Maybe here and I'll knock it down. You know, and I can start to tint all this. And even maybe here and there, hit the tops of these, the rocks where they're catching that horizon. And start to build it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you're doing this heavy lit environment, that is going to affect a lot of things. Okay. Does that make sense?
Hello?
Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, I don't know what's going on with your mic. Where are you at?
Hi.
What do you think?
Well, it's definitely in the works. I didn't have enough time. I was really held up with work, but I get it for the most part. I think when you said earlier in the class, you said start big, then small. That kind of big tip for me.
Yeah, and by the way, that applies to your what's your major?
Graphic design.
Okay, so image building, you know, if you're going into vector and you're doing a vector illustration, same idea, big to small. If you're doing thumbnails you tend to keep pretty loose, but I still think big to small, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't put the big shape in, nothing locks together. It gets piecemeal and disconnected, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it really applies to everything. It actually applies to everything, period. I mean, everything I see in the world, I go, oh, that's just like painting. Hang on, let me get rid of this stupid thing. I'll have to go look at it. Okay, so do you think you know where you're going now?
I think so. I was going to go for more of like a daytime,
That's
like
fine.
clear sky look.
Much more reference for that.
Yeah.
You know, and again, you're probably going to get a warmer light, and that, you know, how you want to light it, obviously that's up to you. It's still going to have blue. It's still going to have, I just want to see something real quick.
I do have a question in
Sure.
regard to so I have an iPad, and I think I mentioned a couple times my laptop. So is there, I tried to mirror my laptop and the iPad, but that lags even more on the iPad. Like, is there a
I
suggestion
didn't even
that
know you could do that.
yeah, I had no idea either. My husband showed me.
Well, that's interesting. Now you're going to have to do a tutorial in here and show us all how to do that. Anyway,
Well,
go
it
ahead.
lags though.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it lags. I think it's because it's like the computer connecting to the, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the software, but when I use the stylus on or my pen on my iPad, there's like a huge lag. I'll see it on the laptop, but not on the iPad.
You can do this with a mouse. That's why I keep it. I deliberately designed it that way, so it could be very broadly painted.
Okay.
Especially in this phase of it, we're just doing the big washes. I mean, I could do this with a mouse, not that hard. And the reason being is there's already an under image, right?
Yeah.
So I'd probably just do it with my mouse for now.
Okay, sounds good.
It's like the lagging, I don't know.
I just think I have too much stuff on my laptop. I probably have to clear it out.
Could be. Do you Bluetooth it together, or is there an actual cable?
It's not an actual cable. Actually, you know what? That might work. But anyway, I just mirror it. So like on your top screen, right next to the Wi-Fi where it shows
Yeah.
that little TV thing. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It'll connect to whatever other Apple products you have.
Just badly. Okay, I'm gonna try.
Right.
Well, what I've wanted to use, what I think they should do, and maybe this does that, is you should be able to use your iPhone, your iPad, your Mac, whatever, to use as like separate monitors. Like if I'm doing a photo, because I do a lot of video stuff for my girlfriend's, and just in general for here and my girlfriend's restaurant. And I usually hardwire the camera that I'm using into my Mac, so I have a monitor, so I can actually see bigger what's going on and make sure my lighting's right and all that kind of stuff. But I'm plugging it together. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, so do you think you know what you're doing here?
I think so. And all the reviews, I think that helped as well. Are you going to be uploading this class video?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I usually will. The only time I don't is if I feel like I didn't really say anything all that significant or whatever. Hang on, why is that not working? That's weird. Oh, that's why. So you're going to want whatever color you're going to use, you're going to kind of come in here and just go get that sort of nailed down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like just get the base color in.
Yeah, and then I might come in here and go, okay, these roofs are going to be a little warmer. Whatever it's going to be, that might go onto a different layer. See, I'm only going to get so far with the opacity here. So then at some point I have to either, I might find another overlay on another layer that's working for me, or I might start going to opacity or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Well, what was that? Okay, good. Where's Jessica? She here?
Hello.
Okay, you sent me an email, right?
I did.
And I sent it back just saying to upload it, right?
I haven't. I checked last night. I haven't checked this morning though.
Check what?
My emails.
Oh, okay. I just said this to upload it.
Okay, cool.
Because what you said sounded legitimate to me, so it's fine.
Okay.
It didn't sound like what I always hear, which is like, my wrist hurts. I actually had a student say my cat basically ate my homework. And I'm just like, really? I look that stupid? Really? Don't answer that, Irene.
My cat ate my homework.
The wrist things really drives me crazy. There was somebody in it. This is like last term or maybe the term. I think it was last term. I go, how come I only have 2 drawings here? Well, I did those 2 drawings and my wrist hurts. I go, how old are you? 20. I'm like, you want to have a career in this? Forget it. Like, I don't know how that works. Oh, this looks cool. Who's this? Oh, this is Jessica. Jessica.
Yeah. Sorry. I wasn't sure if you were looking at something else.
This looks cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just start playing around, getting a little bit of different shifts in hue in those rocks a little bit, but I like the overall hue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then find your places where you can sort of warm it up a little or whatever, however you want to do it. Okay.
All right, cool.
But I think it looks really good. And you're understanding everything?
Yeah. I think I was just trying to play with the palette a little bit more because I tried to go with the night scene.
Yeah.
And everything was very blue. So that's why I just added the big old moon.
Well, yeah. So now you've got an excuse to warm up those tops of the rocks if you want.
Yeah.
what was I going to say? But all your, what's your major?
Illustration.
Oh, good. Okay. And again, we probably had this conversation. What do you want to do?
Yeah. So, there's not really a specific, I just like, I love painting. I love, drawing and stuff. So just, again, like any excuse, just, pay me to
Yeah.
draw stuff. That would be cool.
Yeah, that's how I was.
Yeah.
Like I never understood people like even places I really like, maybe Imagineering I could have stayed at forever because it changes every day. And I
Mhm.
like that about it. Hang on. But like in a place like Imagineering, what's fun about it is you came in one day and they go, hey, we need to design the lighting for the Beast Library. Hey, we need to design this and that for the retail space. Hey, we need to work on the floor design for the Sorcerer's Library or Sorcerer's Room or whatever, and it just every day it would change. All of a sudden you need to do the ergonomics, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I like that. So that kind of thing sort of satisfies that. But I also liked it when people call you up and it's a packaging gig or it's an illustration gig or it's a book with Bill Maher or it's a storyboard gig or it's, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think it's fun because it's like, then if you've built a very broad skill set, you have a place to use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if I was doing the same thing all the time, like literally the same thing all the time, that would drive me crazy.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Okay, so the only thing I'd say is maybe I'm just curious. Maybe that could go back a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
When I do that, it's starting to become really important. And I think it is important from a lighting perspective. It could also be sitting back a little more. And then I'm just curious about this. I just do this constantly where I run through the color spectrum on elements and just go, do I have the right color? You know what I mean? Yeah, and I think it's fine. And then again, this is influencing this. These probably would be moist, a little bit wet, damp, whatever. So you can justify a little bit of hotter light on it here and there, but I would still start everything with this stuff is like big to small, right?
Yeah.
And then for me, then it's a buildup. Like I'm never going to go, bam, probably that direct color because I'm going to build up to the brightest color. I want to build up to my highlights, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes this is a good thing to look for, like with painting. Sometimes people will like, you got a forehead, whatever, and they put in the flesh tones or whatever, and then they go bing, and they put like basically white for a specular highlight, right? And it doesn't look right. It looks like bird shit sitting on somebody's head. Right? And the reason is they didn't build to that highlight. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the area around that's going to get lit, and then it's going to probably get a little more light, and then bing, then you hit your highlight, right? And then it's going to drop back off. But if you just go to that hot hit, it's not set up correctly, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, so nail this one. Are you okay? Have you had basic design?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. And what else? Have you had color theory?
I haven't had color theory, but I did everything to the specification of getting my degree. So I'm technically graduated.
From here?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now what's the goal?
Now I'm just because of the way things went last semester, I was like a semester late on signing up to get my degree because everything's online, and I was kind of getting like thrown around, and I was like, I don't know where to go, because usually you could just go to the counseling center and get your graduation application. It's like super like 5-minute thing. And by the time I found out like where I was supposed to go, it was already like past the cutoff date. So
what I would say is like, if you've been there that long, long enough and all that stuff, I'd really start thinking about what does my portfolio look like?
right. That's what I'm working on right now.
Okay. All right. Where's Kayla? Where are you?
Hello.
Okay. Where did this image come from?
I just looked up like grayscale images on Google.
Okay, good. And then you just did your floating the color over the top of it?
Hmm.
I like it. What do you think?
Yeah, it was fun playing around with it. I had like an idea of like a slightly stormy scene with like
Yeah.
sunlight coming through.
You might get a little bit of cool. Okay, again, like this surface here would have puddly stuff. It'd probably be pretty wet because, you know, waves would be crashing over it.
Yeah.
So it gives you an excuse to pull in some of this down facing. This is an up facing plane, correct?
Hmm.
So that can give you a really nice, and again, you can find some really good reference to this, tide pools and things like that. Let's see if we can do it a little bit. I'm just going to grab some of this. And an overlay or this, I might cool some of this out a little bit based on the sky color. And again, I'll probably have to pull it back. But see how we can cool out those rocks a little bit here and there?
Hmm.
So I'm going to knock it down a little bit more like that. And then here and there, you know, just cooling them out helps. You don't want to do it everywhere. It's probably going to be more over there than anywhere. That's probably enough for now. And then I might come up here, see if I can, how far I can go with this. Yeah, see, it doesn't like to go to really light values. Now I'm going to go here, maybe grab that. And then say maybe there's some reflections happening in some of these, you know, some of these would be like a little deeper, inch deep or whatever. Maybe spill some over here. You know, just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Really subtle. So, you know, again, I'm always thinking about, it's not necessarily thinking about warm and cool or anything. I'm thinking about what the lit environment is. And then I'm thinking about how can I shift and make this look more interesting always, right?
Hmm.
But I like this. Maybe I get a couple of hits here, or maybe even going to the warmer here. It's a little strong. Hang on. Let me go into another layer so again, so I can dial it in. You know, just warm up a couple of them. Yeah.
Hmm.
It warms up over here kind of nice. I like that. Now, another thing you can do is, and let's see if I can do this. Because the light's behind it, but I can, sometimes you can kind of get away with, if this was, let's say it's a red ship, I might be able to have the light sort of hitting where it's getting a pure hue there, a little pure hue. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So, because if it's a red ship, it can catch glints of like really, that's a little too much. So I'm going to knock it down a little bit. But it'll give me a little pop of warmth in there if I can make it work, yeah?
Yeah.
That's actually probably enough right there. Because it's sort of backlit. But it just gives me a little pop. There was a really cool, hang on. No idea if I can find this. Let's see. Trying to find this image because it speaks to what I just said really well. Here it is. So he's got a very monochromatic environment here, correct?
Yeah.
But then, you know, he highlights the sail a little bit and then catches this sort of pure red and green on here, and boom, it gives this, it gives some relief from all that monochromatic color. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice focal point.
Yeah. So just bang, your eye goes right there. And it also, again, gives you some warmth and some relief from just that, you know, and he pinked up the clouds a little bit. It's just enough. So it feels like a misty, foggy environment, but bam, I got a little pop in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of your design process, right? If you're going to design something that's very, you know, sort of like this, very monochromatic, maybe I can find a reason to, you know, like these sail, they're backlit. So these sails would probably get some of this light passing through them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to give me, like, if you look at this guy, hang on. This is oil, but still. Sort of like how he's painting this kind of stuff, right? This is catching it from this way, but he does a lot where they're catching it from the other way, where the sun's passing through it. And that gives you an excuse to light it up a little bit and get a nice pop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, this guy's a badass. These are all oil paintings. You know, but hopefully you guys go in and get inspired by this type of, this guy knows color like crazy, right? Look at that. You can rip that off, man. He didn't invent it, it's just lighting. Or this, just a nice pop right there, and it goes into this warm dark. On and on and on. Yeah?
He kind of reminds me of Edgar Payne.
He's, this one right here. Where'd it go? Here's the first one. I think it's this one. I mean, that's straight up Edgar Payne right there.
Yeah, definitely master studies. Lots and lots.
Yeah, but this guy paints a lot around like Newport. He's a Californian. He's from China, I think.
Oh, cool.
But he's California. Really, man. I saw one of his paintings over at the Masters American West. Holy smokes, it was cool. I think it was this one. Or it was one like this. It was sort of like this. It wasn't that one, but it was sort of like that. These lit hillsides, you know?
Yeah, that's so neat.
If it was me, there it is. That's straight up Edgar Payne. Look at those clouds. Look at that.
I know, it's gorgeous.
Right. Be looking at things like this. Don't just be looking at concept art. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
This is somebody who's got a masterful grasp of brushwork, color, design, and it's all observational. This guy's out painting from life all the time. Learn from that, you know, and learn from the other stuff too. But this is important, this stuff.
When you do plein air paintings, how do you usually start?
Quick drawing. And then I block in, I look at the scene, I squint down, I look at the scene, and I go, how can I reduce this to somewhere between 2 and 7 shapes? Okay.
Okay.
So what people tend to do is they go, and we go over this in my Saturday class a lot, and as soon as the stupid plein air class passes, I'll teach it. But what people tend to do is like they'll look at a hillside and they'll start doing this. Hang on. And they'll see a hillside. So here's their drawing, let's say. So here's my hillside. And maybe there's some stuff here, and there's some trees. They'll go in here, and like the hillside's going to have variations. It's going to have some greens, it's going to have some browns, it's going to have variations of green, maybe some ochre, correct?
Mhm.
And they'll go, okay, there's a little bit of this color right here. And then there's a little bit of this green, right? You know, it's a horrible green. Let's try that. Then there's a green patch right here. And then it goes to sort of an ochre green patch down here. Okay, that whole thing is never going to work. It disconnects like crazy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what you're going to do is you're going to go look at it and go, okay, so, you know, okay, so now I've determined instead of the environment, I'll go through this real quick because I know this isn't a plein air class, but now I've determined that what people do is they start looking at every little thing, okay? And when you're really looking at it, you go, okay, this complex scene is this hillside, and then someone's back here, let's say, and then they go, well, there's a bunch of trees. It's like, no, these trees are all basically massed together. So there's that idea, right? So there's some trees here. And then, you know, there's some scrub down here. And I don't know, there's a little shack or something here. You know, and you go, okay, what, you know, and then maybe there's some more stuff here. So now I'm going, okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4 shapes. And you can usually squint down, and if you mass things together, you can, you know, you can break it down to very simple shapes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then I go in just like I were doing kind of with this, and I'd look at this hill and I go, well, what's the kind of overall color? Just try and find one sort of overall thing. It's more or less what it is. Okay. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to, with a washy brush, not thick paint at all, I'm going to go in and wash that in. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And then I'm going to do the same thing here, and then on the foreground and this. And then I've got everything masked in as sort of big shapes, just washy, loose, transparent. And then I'll start to build into those shapes. So then I can go, okay, there's some dirt showing here. Whatever, you know, there's some scrub, you know, it'd be a different color, but I'm just going to do it this way. You know, and and maybe there's a big shadow value here. And I start just knocking in the shapes within the shapes. Does that make sense?
So this is kind of like your underpainting.
Yeah, it's totally my underpainting, right? And then just like we're doing now, I start to slowly build up to more and more opaque. And then my lightest lights are my thickest paint. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's called fat over lean. Okay. Now, if you're working in watercolor, you're never going to, go to opaque because it's watercolor, unless you're adding gouache. That's different. But any opaque media, more or less, I work like that. And I like to have the same methodology for gouache, for acrylic, for oil, and then watercolor is a little different. Does that make sense? But watercolor,
Yeah.
I'm still going to block in the big shapes the same way, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Just realized I got all this stuff I got to do it. I didn't realize I had to do it. Okay. All right. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, thank you for explaining.
Okay, this is nice, though. I like this. What's your major?
Illustration.
You know what you want to do?
Kind of. Just like Jessica said, I like doing everything. But originally I was entertainment art, and then I switched to illustration.
Why did you switch?
Because the way you described illustration as you can do so many different things.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Here's what my point of view of that when I was in school is I looked at, okay, so I found industrial design, which was the holy grail. But I go, I don't want to just be an industrial designer. I want to be I want to be able to be a really good illustrator and designer. And I want to be able to do some of that industrial design. So I ran my own minor kind of in industrial design a little bit. And the reason being is that I looked at like industrial designs, I go, they're real limited. Like they're not good painters. They're usually not very good at doing things organic. And I'm like, I don't want to be limited like that, but I want that knowledge base they have. And I want to have that Viscom drawing skill. So I did that. But then I also want to be able to go and do full on paintings and maybe gallery work and design work and blah, blah, blah. And I just sort of went into it with that mindset. And then I also at some point figured out, I go, if I'm super good at drawing, if I'm super good at painting, I'm super good at design, I can kind of do anything, right?
Yeah.
And now I would add 3D into that equation. Okay. And I would also add motion graphics and maybe some video editing in Premiere and
Okay.
After Effects, right? I think you guys need to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just thinking about this. I go, man, if I went back out into my active career again, and this, man, I've only been out of it for like 4 years. I'd have to add things to my skill set at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have to because I was usually in charge of things. So I had a person to do 3D. I had a person do this. I had a person do that. But, you know, because I was always like, I don't need to have a 3D skill set right now. I'm mostly art directing. But I was always using my drawing and design skill set all the time. Okay. But I think it's way better to have a 3D skill set now. So you guys have to learn a lot more crap than I did. Okay, who's this?
That's me.
I like this, how organic this looks in here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on a color overlay?
That's I use like 2 overlays. I think it's color and the, let me look on my thing. But yeah, and then I just smudged it so it can like look more natural.
Yeah, I like that. The only thing I'd say is like maybe
I was just having a hard time like get like not blending it but making it look different from the boat. I feel like it was just
Oh, okay. You know what I did with that?
Mhm.
Because I did too. I just lit the shit out of the boat.
Okay.
You know, this was for a demo, so I was just sort of like, eh. Because then, you know, it's like when you do these things really fast,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden you go, oh shit, man, there's a design issue there or whatever. But then I just go, I'm going to light the hell out of the boat. So it pulls forward. I'm actually going to go and tweak it out a little more because somebody wants a print of it.
Yeah.
And then, but the other thing I'd say is I just make sure that you can justify this green being this green in late, you know, not at night, right? So
Okay.
it might be a little, because I really like that. I like the way it looks. And I don't know if it's like pulling down the saturation a little bit, maybe.
I was playing around with it and that's the best because it was brighter than that before.
Or maybe even like, I don't know if this will work.
It has its own layer too. It's under grass. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I might come in here and just try. I'd have to make a better selection, obviously.
Mhm.
But I just like to try things and see if they work. And I'll tone this down. It's going to be screaming, but I'm just going to tone it. Let's go. Let's try it on Hue just for the hell of it. If I add a little warmth to the horizon,
Mhm.
you don't have to go crazy with it. You might be able to justify it a little bit. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so it can like hit light on the rock.
Yeah, just so I'm saying maybe it's very late afternoon,
Mhm.
you know, because it's a fantasy environment. You can do kind of what you want to a point.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with anything you're doing fantastical or whatever, just make sure it has its own internal logic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you see these crazy Marvel movies, I mean, they're totally ridiculous, but you buy into the internal logic of that world at some point, right? Or Star Wars or whatever. Okay. All right. So you know what you're doing?
Yeah, and then so because I'm lighting it up, I'll just take like a little bit of the stars off of the sky, right?
Yeah, you could.
More light is meaning less.
Yeah. What tends to happen with the sky, especially all the way up until it gets totally dark,
Mhm.
is that it gets dirtier and warmer towards the horizon and lighter.
Yeah.
Okay. Now at night, even at night, a lot of times you'll see it lighter towards the horizon. A lot of the times I think that's just light pollution or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, but what I do like about this is all this organic. It just feels very organic.
Mhm.
Like I love that little texture there, and all like this over here.
Yeah, I use the eraser too a little
Yeah, good.
just so I can like mix it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Ooh, this looks pretty good. Where you at? Where's Jordan? It's Jordan, right? Where'd Jordan go?
Picture you have by your desk?
Huh?
That was mine.
Oh, okay. This looks good. Yeah?
Oh yeah, thank you. I had a little trouble with the color of the actual building, the library. I wanted to go make it a little more pink.
Now just remember, think about how it's going to do that in a night environment, right?
Right.
And a lot of times, by the way, if I'm stuck, that's a light colored building, right? I just go out in front of the house and look at a building across the street. It's a light colored building at night. And I just go, what does it do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that'll give me an idea. I mean, I tend to, instead of going like for something like that, instead of going, well, I'm going to go online and find a picture. If I can just look at a house across the street that's a light value, I go, oh, that's what it does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so you might just want to temperature it down a little bit, but keep it light or artificially light. I artificially lit it just because I think it's more interesting.
Yeah, sure.
But that's up to you. You could probably cool off the top of this a little, but it looks like you're still working on it, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay, but you're getting it all?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. So many millions of ways to do this stuff. Where's Tang at?
Hey, Professor.
Yeah. This feels opaque.
Yeah.
So go back and use your color overlay, yeah?
Okay.
And then we'll take a look at it on Monday, yeah?
Yep.
And by the way, this is an exercise, okay? I'm not expecting all these I'm not going to pound you to death about these things. I just want to make sure that you're understanding the concept and that you're understanding how to use the tools and start to think for yourself and all this sort of thing. Taylor, what I was going to say is I just start to get some warmer things in here. Maybe it's subtle because I like this weird lighting.
There it goes.
I like this weird bluish thing. Yeah? Where you at?
I'm here.
But now you're going to introduce some other things into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I really like that. What is that? Is it like a grayed down tealy blue?
Mm-hmm. I played with the hues a bit after I got my colors in.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good start. And now just go, because when you start lighting this thing up, like sometimes in this case, I will go in and do like try and light something up. So I go, it just gets me rolling like in here. Like once you put some like warmth in there and stuff, it's going to really look cool. And also when you kind of nail down a nice overall thing, because that again, that whole color, when you put it down, because I do that all the time, I just throw a whole color down or I cover the canvas as fast as I can. Then I've got that overall structure there. Now I can start working into it. And it actually means I do less work. Because if I just come in here and start lighting stuff up, actually some over here, like I'd leave this one in here. Hang on. Like that in there, I'd leave cool. That's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't just warm up all the windows. I'd leave some of these cool, which is kind of cool. And then, warm up certain things. Because you got a really nice start here. I'd leave a lot of this cool out and I'd probably just warm some things up and sort of just kind of go back and forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so you feel confident?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, if you keep all this back here a little more monochromatic, then if you come up here and you warm up these lights in the
Really highlight the ship in the foreground.
yeah, and it'll be warm and it'll go whoop, it'll pull forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Okay, I got to everybody's, right? I think I did. All right, so we know what we're doing, everybody, yes?
Yes.
We're just going to keep going. I want to look at them again on Monday. At the most, we're going to go to Wednesday. Then I'm jumping to probably one other little color thing, but it's just a tool thing. And then I'm going to jump into a different area. Does that make sense?
Okay, sounds good.
That I think
Okay.
you guys will like. It's fun. The thing we're going to go into after this lighting and color thing, it'll be kind of fun. Okay, you guys. Oh, let me make sure I got 2 hits on my attendance. Yes, I do. Okay. All right, you guys, I'm gonna let you go. Have a good weekend and work on these. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, you guys. Thank you.
Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.